勇者ギロチンでメフィスト。世界の意志に従い、その呼びかけに応えん。壮大な女子誌の幕を下ろす時だ。
Hey all, Mukuro here. I recorded this video 3 times at this point, but I'm glad I actually did because I did more testing each time. I tested Guillotine like 4 hours, then recorded, then tested, then recorded, then tested, and I updated our gear a bit more with each recording, and my conclusion changed every time. So firstly, let's go through her kit. I really like Guillotine, so I was waiting for her for quite some time. I wanted an alt for ages because I think she's a cute character that has potential in her kit, even the base form. So her kit. So her skill 1, she has a bar that she fills 11 times. With each level up or fill, she reloads 10% of her magazine, recovers a small bit of health, and adds a multiplier to her elemental damage bonus and attack bonus that she gives to everyone, or every water ally. So this elemental bonus goes up to 12% and attack bonus goes to 11%. It's her own attack and not final attack, so her skill 2 does not count to this conclusion. So she gives around 8 to 9,000 of her own attack. I am calculating this based on 80k to 90k that attackers usually get. This is around my level-ish, so if you're higher level or lower level, this attack bonus is going to change. But usually I calculate around 90k attack. Her skill 2 increases her own attack by 181%. I thought this buff was insane when I first read it, because I read it as 2 separate buffs, but this is one buff. If this was a separate buff, by the way, she would be insane. She would be one of the best ARs, or if not the best AR in the whole game. I was really hyped up about this, but I read it wrong, so my hypes went to nothing. But she's still good, I think, or way better than I expected. And she buffs her elemental slightly by 7%. This is not insane, but it is something, I guess. It completes one of her gear if she doesn't have a perfect roll. That is 29% or so. If she has like 22, this basically makes it a 30. This is not bad, this is not horrible, this is just a good addition. And her burst skill is she gives attack damage to water core allies and 20% elemental. This is good if the unit has low elementals. If they have high elementals, this means nothing. But it is still a bonus. I'm not going to say this is nothing straight up, but it is pretty bad. Her other part of the burst is she deals continuous damage according to 20% of the final attack times hero level. So with 11 levels, this is 220% of her final attack. This is pretty good. This calculates also the buffs, so this is pretty damn good. What she's missing and what every attack scaler is missing right now is a burst 1 with damage up or damage taken increase, because since boosting them with litter basically does nothing, and you can see in the test as well that I'm going to show, litter basically does nothing to them, because the increase they get from litter is what, like 5% to maybe 10% at most. But if you check the rogue test that I did, as you can see, it is not too different. They're not getting scaled too differently. Even though rogue's buffs are horrible, like it is 7% we are talking here, and it is extremely close here, because they're basically buffing themselves. The DPSs here are buffing themselves with attack already. Litter's attack buff is basically nothing. As long as we get units like these, the current units we have, such as Quincy and again Maiden, Scarlet Black Shadow, these units do not scale well with litter, and they will never will, because they're already giving themselves tons of attack, and they're not getting buffed by damage ups or damage taken increases on the as debuffs on the mobs. So I tested Guillotine as a DPS, and since she's a sub DPS, she's not a main DPS, sadly. I wish she was a main DPS, but she can be, because it doesn't buff her enough, and her multipliers are so low at 14-ish% for her damage per hit. She deals a lot of damage per hit though. So she's extremely close to Summer Sakura, which is her alternative or counter element version, or her other element version. The problem here is damage over time effect that she does, Guillotine does, is not scaled by Summer Sakura. Since it does not count as a damage over time, it is just a burst skill that deals damage over time. So it is not the same thing. It is an effect, not a damage over time, debuff, or whatever that counts. So she does not scale with it, sadly. I wish she did, because it would work perfectly. But from you have seen, for me, specifically for me, because my Ludmilla doesn't have elementals. She's extremely low, or has none, as from what I remember. She is the best buffer for Ludmilla for me at the moment. If my Ludmilla gets more elemental, well, she's going to deal more damage than Quincy, but she's also still going to get buffed more than Quincy here. So my Quincy's damage doesn't really change much. It is not an awful amount, because my Quincy already has a lot of elementals, and she basically has nearly cap elementals, as you can see. And Guillotine's buffs don't really mean anything to her, sadly. But she is going to buff Ludmilla better here. Since Ludmilla needs a buffer non-stop, either she's going to buff herself or someone else needs to buff her. And if you will say, well, we can use just Phantom here, right? Yeah, but Phantom doesn't buff her enough, sadly. My Phantom is not max skills, my Guillotine is not max skills, my Ludmilla is not well built, but we can see that from the percentiles here, Ludmilla is getting buffed more from Guillotine. Quincy, on the other hand, cannot scale well, like I said, because she has high elementals already, she buffs her own attack, the damage up is pretty nice, but Quincy doesn't need this specifically. Quincy already buffs herself quite a lot. Best thing that can buff Quincy here as a burst 1, or another burst 3, is damage taken increase, or damage over time scaling, or damage over time unit that is going to go extremely well with her. As a water DPS though, not something else, because she does not work well with Summer Sakura. Because Summer Sakura's damage, even though pretty good for a neutral or not positive environment, Guillotine does way more. So there's not really a thing that I can say, yeah, just use Summer Sakura instead. No, go with Phantom. So, I know that everyone is saying she's horrible, she's trash, skip her, even if rerun, don't get her. I would say no here. I'm not going to say pull, but I'm not going to say skip either, because she is a unit that we will probably not going to get anytime soon. This has been a thing. This is nothing new from Shift Up. Sometimes they do not release units. Sometimes they do not release the units that we actually need. Sometimes they just don't release elemental DPSs for some reason. For example, water, fire, wind. These elements suffered a lot through the game's life cycle. Until SPS, we didn't have a wind DPS. Then we got Summer Sakura on top of it. Until Ludmilla last year, we didn't have a water DPS. Then they released Quincy before the anniversary this year. Then, now they're releasing Guillotine. So we got 3 water DPSs back to back. And one from the last year as the only water DPS, and she's pretty damn good. I just don't have her build, sadly. because we don't really need water. They do not throw, oh, just go use water here as an elemental boss, as a solar raid boss. So the Guillotine is extremely unique here. I think she's going to be way more popular or more needed in the future. But if they release a unit that is going to change Guillotine's spot, no, it won't happen. Do you know why? Because Phantom is worse than Guillotine. Phantom doesn't have the DPS. Phantom doesn't have the debuffs that is needed. Phantom is good for Quincy, but it is still not enough. You need still high investment or a different unit for Quincy again. It is not that great. You can use another unit that is better suited for that job. Sadly, I really like Phantom, but I cannot really use her. In normal campaign situations and tower, we cannot use these units anyways. You need double DPSs. So the supports are out of question for the tower. So, why Phantom and Guillotine exist then? Solar Raid, and Solar Raid, and that's their only purpose. They're releasing so many Solar Raid units these days. They're not even touching hard campaign anymore. Hard campaign teams are set in stone. Only the main strong DPSs that we get that are game breaking, such as Anniversary, Winter, which is the next banner by the way. They're releasing 3 to 4 DPSs every year that is game breaking, and one of them is Anniversary, which we passed with Cindy, which we will see after this banner. Literally, the New Year's banner is a DPS Pilgrim banner each time so far, so that is going to be the next one. And half Anniversary, if they're going to release a DPS, they didn't release with Crown last year and Dorothy in the first year's half Anniversary, so it is usually a support banner for now until they change it. But I am guessing it's going to be a support banner again, so do not get surprised from the data we have. And Summer usually has a DPS or two, changes, but from what we have seen so far, it is a DPS and a support. And after the Summer, it is basically Wild West. So we can get a water DPS for sure. We got Ain, for example, we got Tianaga, for example, we got Zwei. Then after them, we got Quincy as a water DPS. So they can release any unit in any order they want. So from these data though, we are going to be fine for a while, and we are not going to really see a water DPS for a while. That doesn't mean that they're not going to release or they cannot release a water DPS. Even with all of these, I think Guillotine is really strong for her purpose. She's not a main DPS, so do not expect her to be a main DPS. And Guillotine is going to be really important later on. So is this a pull? Am I trying to say she's a must pull? No, you can live without her. That's for sure. She deals like 500 million. She can deal way more. I don't have perfect gear for her. I don't have perfect doll for her. She can deal way more damage. I expect her tops to be to 1 billion. So do not get surprised if someone can deal 1 billion damage with her. She can deal 1 billion damage. She just needs a really good loadout. She needs good rolls, and she's set in stone. She's a really strong sub-DPS, like Maiden. I know that everyone says that, but Maiden has more potential and easier to build, and has easier setup to support. I know, I get it. We like bashing a secondary unit to the ground, but Guillotine is really strong. I am not going to change my opinion about that. When I first recorded this video, I said Guillotine was pretty bad. She's extremely underwhelming, and she can get power crept easily. The more I think about it, the more I see my data, I can only say she is really strong. She's not a main DPS. Do not try to make her a main DPS. Do not put her in the same shoes as Cinderella, Quincy, SPS, Alice, Modernia. She is not. She is not supposed to be a main DPS. She's a really strong sub-DPS with decent buffs at best. But she is the second best AR. Or third, if you want to count Scarlet here. Scarlet has high investment. But you need a lot of max ammo rolls. You need speed cube. You need good elemental rolls. But she's really good at what she does. She doesn't have a kit that scales with her own, but she's still really important. So Guillotine is, in this case, is the third best AR in the whole game, which is awesome. We don't have ARs in this game. Most of the ARs suck ass. We either have machine guns, sniper rifles, or rocket launchers. And we need variety range DPSs. We cannot just have rocket launchers in every range, or SMGs or snipers. We can't really force these DPSs, we need more tools. But we are getting more fillers, sadly. But fillers are also needed, so I cannot really judge here. At high ranked solo raid teams, I'm seeing they're putting Ayn as a solo electric DPS in the team, so she can deal somewhat damage while the others dealing their normal damage, forcing Ayn to lose a lot of DPS. They can just solve this problem with showing the true damage team, but it is not really covered in the YouTube or any other social media space, I guess, since I'm not seeing any teams in the top ranks that focus on true damage, even though we have two true damage DPSs currently. I think we are going to get a new friend to that team soon. Finally, we will get an actual true damage comp that people will use. And that's going to be the next banner, hopefully. So, I'm going to cover that one as well. See you in the next one.